Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Kristen Jackson. I'm the Digital Outreach Manager with the Natural Resources Council of Maine. I see a lot of familiar names that I'm sure have been to an NRCM event before, supported us before, but in case you haven't, NRCM is the state's largest environmental advocacy organization, and we harness the power of science, the law, and the voices of people like yourselves to protect the nature of Maine. We work statewide to promote the health of Maine's waterways, promote sustainable communities, decrease air and climate changing pollution, conserve our lands and wildlife habitat, and defend environmental policies and programs that help protect Maine and Maine people. And today you're joining us to hear about Maine's most effective litter prevention program, the Bottle Bill. So we'll do introductions of our speakers, but you're going to hear from NRCM Sustainable Maine Director, Sarah Nichols, Redemption Center owner, Peter Welch, and the CEO of Clynk, Alison Vanderhoof. But before we dive into that content, I want to do just a few housekeeping items that we always do on our Zooms. So the first is that this will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel probably tomorrow or the day after. So if there's any content that you missed, you can go back and revisit it there. You'll also notice that we're doing this in a webinar format, so you are muted and we don't have access to your video, but you do have access to the chat. If you have any comments you'd like to share with speakers, we're happy to see them. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. And if you have questions, we recommend you put them in the Q&A feature, which you'll see on the bottom of your screen. And that way we can keep track of them all. If they get put in the chat, sometimes they get lost by other chats that come in. So we'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but best if you put your questions in the Q&A box. And then last, you can also enable closed captioning if that is helpful. From the bottom of your menu bar, there should be an option for captions, and you can turn that on for the webinar. But those are all of my housekeeping items. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Sarah to kick us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you so much, everybody, for taking time out of your busy days to join us for this webinar today. I'm the Sustainable Maine Director here at NRCM. I am the resident waste policy nerd wonk. I'm dedicated to making sure that Maine is a leader in sustainable waste policy, and the Bottle Bill program is something that's really near and dear to my heart and my mission to do that. And also to NRCM's mission. Fun fact, NRCM had hired Angus King as our lobbyist back in the 70s when this law was being passed, and he worked to pass it back then. And we've been working to protect this program since its conception 45 years ago. Now it's time, it's a little bit showing its age, and it's time to make some adjustments to it, and that's why we're here today. So I will get started if I can click on this. This is the rundown for our presentation. So I am going to spend maybe 8 or so minutes talking about the importance of protecting Maine's Bottle Bill to you. And then I'll hand the floor over to Peter Welch, who's a Redemption Center owner in Portland, and then to Alison Vanderhoof, who's the CEO of Clynk. They'll each speak for around the same amount of minutes, and then I will take the floor back over and talk about an overview of proposed policy changes that we've been working on. And then we'll hopefully have plenty of time for discussion and Q&A. And feel free to drop anything in the chat and get that started. Okay. So the intent of Maine's Bottle Bill back in the 70s was really to be a litter prevention policy, and it has succeeded. We do not nearly see as much litter in our pristine Maine environment as we used to. When you go to other states that don't have a bottle bill, it's very apparent that they don't have a bottle bill because there's bottles and cans everywhere. And it has significantly saved a lot of money for municipal taxpayers on those litter cleanup costs and the costs of managing this material otherwise too. So it's really, really delivered on its intent. And we want to make sure it continues to do so. And this idea was further evidenced by recently in 2018. These little nip containers, those little tiny liquor bottles, were becoming a real big problem, littering our environment, and lawmakers decided that it was time to add those to the bottle bill. They hadn't been added, and to do so, this is why the program is successful. They turn little pieces of plastic waste into money. It turns into a currency. These are nickels now that are laying on the ground. And as a result, they either don't get littered, or they get picked up from people who have littered them and get returned in. And I took this photo when I was visiting Clynk. It's a nice bin full of those used to be littered or problematic little nip containers. So I really think of these as a form of currency. Okay. And as a result of that deposit system, that's why this is the gold standard of recycling programs in Maine. That's why we have the highest return rates for this type of material compared to municipal systems. So I always say that, this is the gold standard and municipal is silver. We want to keep as much material in this program as possible. And a lot of it is because of those high return rates, but you also get really high quality commodities. For recycling to work, they need to be clean and sorted enough to be actually turned into new stuff. That's the whole point of recycling. So when you have the things go through the bottle bill, they're clean and sorted by material type, size, color, all of that, and it has a high value in the recycled commodities markets. And recently, Maine also passed a minimum recycled content law for plastic beverage containers. And we were really supportive of that because it really supports the markets from the bottle bill program. All of that plastic that comes out of the bottle bill program now has, it's a demand side intervention that needs to find a home, and it really helps support bottle bills, and it's helping beverage manufacturers around the country and the world get on board with bottle bill programs because they need that material back to make new bottles. So it really is Maine's most successful recycling program. Okay, it's also, as many of you know, a source of currency and charitable giving in Maine. There was too many examples, so I just decided to pick one, and I found this adorable boy. His name's Lucas West. He was 6 when this photo was taken a few years ago in Woolwich, and he wanted to raise money for the Mid-Coast Humane Society. He ended up raising over $1,500 for that, and like I said, this is just one of many stories. If you're willing, I'll ask you to post in the chat how you might, what charity you might donate to through your bottles and cans. And it's just become a real way of life here for Maine. I think it's just a really big part of our culture. A lot of people might save their bottles and cans to give away to a bottle drive or know where they're gonna donate them. And it's a really kind of easy way for people to do that. And I will say that it's estimated that about 5% of the containers redeemed are used for charity, which results in over $2 million a year. And we'll hear about the Clynk to Give program from Alison a little later, which has been really successful as well. Okay, but this is why we're here today. This program is wonderful. It served our state really, really well. But a lot has changed since 1976 when this bill was written, and a lot of changes to the statute have happened to address those, but it's resulted in its effective but kind of clunky, inefficient system, and it's time for modernization. These are headlines that I've put together that have been coming out since last summer. I'm sure that's why a lot of you are joining today, because you are noticing that maybe redemption centers in your area are closed or not as open as much as they used to be, or you're finding it more difficult to return containers, or maybe you're going to Clynk. Like over the summer, they were having a major backup because they were receiving a lot of containers that they weren't necessarily anticipating. And it's, these are symptoms of what's happened here. And I'm going to let the Redemption Center folks talk more about exactly why that is. But this is why we're here today. And this, I love analogies. And this is the analogy I like to use when we're talking about why the bottle bill needs to get fixed. It's not inherently bad. It doesn't need to get repealed or replaced or anything like that. It's like a really, really good old friend that has underlying health conditions that's starting to show symptoms. I chose this photo because of the colors of the shirts. I could put words over them easily, but basically it's just time to help our old friend here. And to further the analogy, there's really no time to waste, actually. This is an emergency situation that we need to help fix the bottle program this session. We're going to get a lot more people into our state over the summer, a lot more drinking beverages over the summer, and we're going to have a lot more of these materials at the same time that our redemption system is facing a lot of significant challenges. So we really need to act soon. But I'll talk more about what I mean when I say it's time to act soon. For now, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Welch to talk about his redemption business. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks everyone for joining today. My name's Peter Welch, and I'm very thankful that the NRCM is putting this webinar on. As a redemption owner, I'm aware that this industry is in a little bit of troubled waters, sort of in need, as Sarah points out. That troubled waters really evolved by virtue of the fact that expenses have been accelerating, the same expenses that you've all been enjoying or not enjoying at home, whatever the level that inflation is, your oil bill, your gas bill, your electric bill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's become a problem, and that's why we've lost so many redemption centers statewide. I think a lot of people on this webinar would be aware that there are a lot of redemption centers that have either reduced hours or closed. And Maine has been fortunate that our redemption centers have been statewide, north, south, east, west, rural, urban, everywhere there are redemption centers, and they fit a need for those communities. And they fit a need in a couple of different ways. One, they allow consumers to participate in a highly successful program that doesn't require a penny of taxpayer money. And that's of good fortune. And it's been so successful with high return rates through the years up into the 90%. Currently, unfortunately, we're sort of drifting down to 70% by virtue of the fact of the closed redemption centers. And there's less access points for people across the state to return their containers. That is producing a difficult situation on multiple levels. The redemption centers are closing, those jobs are being lost. Additionally, municipalities are being forced to deal with that material through their municipal transfer stations, which is an increase to their property taxes without a doubt. And that situation is going to be further compounded at a point in time when we really need to be looking at our environment in a way that we need to accelerate our efforts in the hierarchy of reduce, reuse, recycle in order to promote the well-being of the planet. Our community and our climate need us more than ever. And so I'm a little troubled by the evolution that we sit in as redemption centers. And I know the work that everybody goes through there. And I say this because I've been involved in the redemption business for 43 years. I've owned 2 redemption centers. I started 2 redemption centers. I still run one here on Forest Avenue in Portland, right next to RSVP. Additionally, I've been in the liquor industry as an importer through the years. I was a liquor agent for the state of Maine for over 20 years. Additionally, I was one of the largest retailers of beer, wine, and spirits in the state. And up till just last year, I was a local importer of wines from Europe and abroad into Maine in northern New England. So I'm familiar with the beverage industry. I'm familiar with the redemption industry. And so I've got a chart that I'm going to try to quickly walk you through. It is a very busy chart. So if you don't sort of get it all right away, maybe you can ponder it. But if you get the major theme here, that's what I'm hopefully you can take away. And the major theme is the problems that are happening in the redemption industry are by virtue of the fact that we've had tremendous increases in our cost. The state of Maine regulates what we get paid. And we're in need of a pay increase, which is called our handling fee, that is past due. And I'll take you through this chart if I can right now. Let's see, where is that chart? Okay, can you see that, everybody?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
And I saw we got a question in the chat asking if we'll receive a recording of this. And yes, we are recording, and we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel, which we'll send out to participants.
Okay, here we go. Let's try it this way. How about now?
It is loading, but yes, now we can see it.
Okay, great. Little technical problems. My kids call me Techie Pete, or Techie Dad. Anyways, there's a lot of things on this chart. And we'll go from the top left corner. One of the things we're going to discuss is abandoned property and public funds. The second thing we're going to discuss is the handling fee relative to CPI. And additionally, we're going to discuss the handling fee that we have not received over the period. So I go to June 19th, going across to June 20, June 2021, June 2022, and June 2023. The base year was a handling fee of 0.045 cents. And that was down here in 2019. I've put across the top underneath the annual date, the CPI change as given to us by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the federal government. So CPI went up by 0.6% in by June 20 in that year. The next year went 5.4%, then 9.1, and I estimated for the next year maybe 5.0. These are all the things we're all reading in the newspaper. This is pulling up to your gas pump. This is your oil bill. This is your food bill. This is why you can't get stuff. I mean, all these things are happening. And so I'm not really sharing anything that you people don't know about, but I'm just trying to explain our particular situation as it fits, because we can't raise our price. We're not allowed. If we could raise our price, we would, but we're not allowed. The state manages that. The governor's office, the DEP, and the legislature set that. So that's what we need to get your engagement regarding this particular problem, because we don't have that capacity. Everybody else in business can raise their price. If you're a restaurateur, you raise your price. If you own the car wash, you raise your price. If you're the dollar store, you went to $1.25. We haven't been able to do any of those things. So through the period, if taking CPI from the base year of 0.045 and going all the way up through June of 23, the handling fee should be 5.75 cents as of this coming June. Now, where we end up, it's going to depend on the good efforts of folks like you out there in the public who do reach out to their legislators and who reach out to the governor and the DEP. So I'm going to share with you a variety of other things on this sheet. That's why I said it was fairly busy. I'm going to give you, as you're looking at these orange lines here, redemption P&L, profit and loss, last 4 years expenses. I want to draw attention to the fact our labor costs and the minimum wage have gone up between 27 and 30% over that last 4 years. Included on that, in additional to that, is payroll taxes, workers' comp, and insurances. They're all up. Those items alone amount to about 50% of our expenses. They're obviously huge, and we can compete in a labor pool just like a lot of other people do. And Portland, because we are here, also has a higher minimum wage at $14. And that's gone from $11 to $14 over that same period, which is also a 30% increase. Other items that have moved, our trash bills have doubled over that period of 4 years. And part of the reason for that is we used to be able to recycle some of our non-bottle bill material through the entities that pick us up. But unfortunately, they don't take that back anymore. So we now end up putting that in the trash where it should be recycled. Maybe it should be a candidate for being deposited. Our snow plowing has doubled. I hope nobody else has endured that, but ours has. Our state redemption license fee has doubled. I mean, that fee is small, but it doubled. Our heating oil's up 50%. Water, internet, and phone, way up. Professional fees, legal and accounting, up. All other expenses, rent and property taxes are up. I know I sound like a broken record here, but the fact of the matter is all our expenses are up, but our revenue is not. And that's why you're losing redemption, why we're losing redemption centers, and why the amount of containers being redeemed in Maine has decreased from maybe a high of 92% according to the industry down to about 70% now. So all that material is being foisted back upon the municipalities. The municipalities now have to pay for that somehow and have to deal with that material. I sort of subscribe to the idea that Ma and Pa Kettle, who are seniors and on retired fixed incomes, should not be paying for the luxury of me having a beer or somebody else drinking a bottle of booze. And it's interesting for me to see, because I checked some pricing because I'm in the beverage business, like I told you. So I'm going to, I got a bottle of Tito's in my hand, but some of you people may be familiar with it. And also a bottle of Jim Beam. These two items have gone up $2 and $1 respectively over the last 4 years. I looked at the top 20 items in the states liquor business that's run by the state of Maine. They've gone up on average. Out of the top 40 items, 21 have increased from 50 cents to $2 a bottle. So they've all raised prices. The state of Maine has raised prices. I looked at soda, beer, and wine in plastic containers like these things. The increases, and they're all in this chart, and I won't sort of overly ring through them, but they all went up anywhere from $1 to $4 a case, or some version of 3 to 10 cents a container. We're looking for an increase of like a penny plus, and that's it. And that situation is what is holding the redemption center industry, in harm's way. Without an increase, we're going to keep declining. And the emergency part of this situation is we lost about 40 plus last year. We did a mailing within the last 2 months. We got about 55 return envelopes and letters. So we've been trying to reach out to some of these people to see if they're still there by phone. Most of them aren't. Some was a mail issue, because we all know we got mail issues too, don't we? Among other things. Yeah. And actually, just by the way, I put down the postage stamps are up quite a bit over the last 4 years too. But we don't have an increase. But the beverage industry has been taking increases left and right, and then are sort of arguing that we should not have an increase. And that turns me to the yellow part of my slide here, or my spreadsheet. So the change in the containers that are no longer being redeemed due to the lack of redemption centers is amounting to about $18 million a year in abandoned property in Maine. In other words, so when this Poland Spring bottle does not get back through the system, then it ends up abandoned, and the producer of this item, or the initiator of deposit, gets to keep the money. And that is a significant amount of money. I tend to think that money belongs to the public, because the public paid for that. That's their container. Now, they got disposed of improperly somehow, but at the end of the day, that $18 million is well more than enough to improve the system of redemption that we currently have, to make a variety of other good fixes, and to move us forward in a way that we're looking futuristically towards sustainability in our climate, as opposed to sort of looking backwards. We need to move forward. And redemption centers are perfectly located as an infrastructure across the state. Again, rural, north, south, east, and west, they exist. They're great operations and great cornerstones of improved sustainability systems. So at the end of the day, I guess our complaint is we need help. We need help by all of you folks out there. If you reach to your legislators, reach to the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, reach to the governor's office and the DEP in particular, and say, please protect Maine's bottle bill. It's worked all these years. Why should the senior citizens who are on fixed income be paying increased property taxes because somebody wants to drink a bottle of Tito's alcohol through Bablo? Bablo should take responsibility for that. Bablo should chip in another penny for these containers, as should all the other producing parts of this industry. We shouldn't need to subsidize alcohol in the plastic industry for our environment. And to me, that's sort of like unconscionable. So I'd be glad to entertain any questions through the Q&A or via Sarah and the NRCM, and I'll turn myself over to Alison from Clynk.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. You're always such a wealth of knowledge. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now I'm going to share my screen back and see how that goes. Share and presentation. Kristen, are you seeing my notes slide? Or
we are seeing notes. Yeah.
So I have to swap that. Is that good?
Perfect.
All right, great. So I'll hand it over to you, Alison.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks everybody for coming together today. And Peter, especially, thank you for the data. I usually find myself in the position of being the data wonk, but you covered it. And I will just say that Clynk's expense increases are right in line with what you laid out. 30% on average in most categories, and some categories like utilities and baling wire and other high cost items, we're at 50%. But let me take a minute to introduce who Clynk is and what we do. Clynk is a disruptor in the redemption space. We were born in Maine 17 years ago, and we are focused on consumers and enabling consumer participation in circularity or recycling through modern approaches, which include the use of technology. We operate bag drop recycling programs in Maine, as many of you know. We are also in upstate New York, and we license our account-based recycling technology in other parts of the world. So we have licensed the operators of Oregon, we have operators in Iowa and in Canada, and lots of active discussions happening right now because bag drop is a very compelling offering for consumers. In Maine, Clynk processes 200 million containers each year. So that's about a quarter of all of the containers that get returned or redeemed. We operate Hannaford's redemption centers. Hannaford, as a grocer, is required to take back at grocery, and they have outsourced that activity to us. So we are at 55 Hannaford locations across the state, which is almost every Hannaford. There are a couple of very small ones up north that still use reverse vending machines, but we're at 55. And then we process those containers at large facilities, a large facility in Biddeford and a satellite facility in Oakland that's closer to those northern stores. We're open 22 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 364 days a year. Next. Back one. There you go. All right, so what is bag drop? I'm hoping, given the audience we have here, that many of you have encountered bag drop, either in your personal recycling or as you work with your nonprofit community groups. But in case you haven't, here's a quick overview. So bag drop was conceived as a way to make recycling work better for grocers. Again, as I said, grocers are required to take back in our state, and they were challenged with wanting that take back to be clean and low maintenance and sort of low impact on their stores. And so Clynk was born, and Clynk balances that focus on retailers with a focus on consumers and making that consumer process fast and modern and convenient as well. The way that Clynk works is across the bottom here. So the consumer puts all of their mixed redeemables into a Clynk bag. They affix a tag that has their unique identifying information and their account information in it, and they drop that bag off at Hannaford, either at a depot like the picture here, which is in the parking lot, or in the bottle room. And then those bags are processed by Clynk, and the deposits are refunded to an online account for the consumer to access when they want. Next slide. Consumers are, really like the convenience of this option, and these two panels are just illustrating uptake. So it shows that consumers are adopting this method of recycling. The left-hand side shows Clynk in Maine on the blue line and Clynk in New York on the orange line, where we entered in 2016. And you see, very steady growth over time. And you even see it, sort of close to the end there, an accelerated growth during COVID, where more and more people picked up Clynk as a clean and safe option. On the right-hand side is some stats from Oregon. If you follow this year's bottle bill discussions, you'll hear a lot about Oregon. Oregon is run by a cooperative of beverage producers, their bottle bill, and it's often identified as a good modern program. They operate statewide, and they implemented Clynk bag drop under their own brand name about 11 years ago. And in the last 5 years, their program has seen tremendous growth. They've grown by 650 million containers, and 80% of those containers have come in through bag drop. So it just shows that when it's available to consumers, it's an option that many consumers will take. Next slide. Bag drop is also forward compatible for EPR and for refillables. We handle Smiling Hill today. As we think about how to enable more extended producer responsibility, which which does require consumers to participate in recycling the packaging. Bag-drop, which is the consumer-facing part of our offering, and account-based bulk processing, which is the back end of what we do, has a lot to offer for EPR. You have a relationship with consumers. There's a bank account for deposits if they're collected, or incentives if they're used to get the consumer to return the packaging. There's an automated, high-speed, large-scale materials sort that can sort out any materials in containers, and a sophisticated billing system that recognizes containers of any kind and matches them to the correct manufacturer or distributor, who is responsible for reimbursing deposits or returning the material to its owner and paying the fees associated. All of this bag-drop and account-based bulk processing is enabled by technology, and EPR is very difficult to imagine. It would be extremely cumbersome to do manually without technology. So bag-drop is well positioned to help there. So what's the problem? So for us, in addition to what Peter spoke to in terms of the pressure on the industry in general, Clynk has a unique problem in Maine. Next slide. If we take a step back and we talk about redemption in Maine, or redemption anywhere really in the country and pretty much in the world, there are 3 ways that consumers can redeem their containers. They can have those containers hand counted, and that is what you see at a traditional redemption center. That happens right now for 65% of containers redeemed in Maine, and that is clearly spelled out in the bottle bill today. They also have the option to use at a redemption center a reverse vending machine, which is one of the machines that you feed your containers in one at a time. And 11% of all the containers redeemed in Maine go through a reverse vending machine today, and that too has a place in the bottle bill. It's well spelled out. The third option is bag-drop, like Clynk. And like I said, we're close to a quarter of all containers returned in Maine, but we are not contemplated in the bottle bill. We are not defined in the bottle bill. Historically, we've sort of uncomfortably existed under an umbrella for reverse vending machine. And historically, that has worked okay because all the players in the space have worked pretty well together. But as we've felt this pressure on our industry with inflation and labor shortages, the partnerships are breaking down because people are under duress. The businesses in the space are under duress, and everyone's looking for relief. And where the bottle bill has gaps, that's an opportunity to push cost or push pressure onto folks that don't have standing in the bottle bill, like Clynk. Next slide. So we're looking for several things in the law changes this round. The first 2 should be relatively non-controversial. The first is that we're looking to be included in the definitions in the bottle bill. So account-based bulk processing, which again is this umbrella over the consumer-facing bag-drop and what happens on the back end, needs to be defined. And we're suggesting that it should be defined as a technology tool that's available to redemption centers. It's how they count and credit consumer containers. There is a structure already for that in the bill, in the current bottle bill that applies to RVMs. So we're just looking for a parallel structure for bag-drop. And along with that, if we split out from RVM, then there needs to be an allowance on the back end that says when you use account-based bulk processing for processing containers for consumers, you can also use the data that's generated to bill the manufacturers and distributors who pay for the program. That's not controversial either. That is the way that an RVM works. And so again, we're just creating parallel structure. What is a little bit more controversial is number 3 here, which is that we are looking for an allowance for redemption centers that use account-based bulk processing to be able to process and fully recycle the material that they touch in exchange for getting compensated for doing that, versus what is required today in the law, which is that loose material has to be handed over to pickup agents who represent the manufacturers for further processing. There's a little bit of both happening today. So in many cases, Clynk handles all the material and recycles it directly, but when requested, we have to follow the law and the pickup agents get loose material. And that's controversial. This request is controversial because it disrupts the status flow. I'm sorry, the status quo, and it disrupts but not doing it disrupts our flow, which is what makes Clynk efficient. So I'll give you a little bit more insight here so you understand what we're describing. On the next slide, this is a picture of my processing center in Oakland. We didn't have time for me to show a video, so I'm hoping that I can illustrate what's going on here. But what you see with the blue conveyor belts are processing lines, and I have 4 of them in this shot. I have 4 in this location. Each one is operated by a human that you see standing there, and they're handling the bags. And what you don't see, so on this shift, they're going to do about 100 to 150,000 containers for the shift. What you don't see here is any human in the back of that photo. So once the containers clear the station and the operator handles that container, the system is built to sort all of those containers by commodity type, and then to further sort the glass by color, which is required, and then to bale that material so that when this process is done, the bales are fully prepared for a recycler. Nothing more needs to be done at this point, and there's no human intervention happening in that back portion of the plant. That's different. What is produced by a bag drop system like Clynk is different than what comes out of a traditional redemption center using hand count or reverse vending machines. They produce loose material that still needs more handling to be baled up and resold. But the law says that pickup agents can request us to stop this automation and provide the pickup agent with loose bottles. And their pickup agents are very specific. They still want us to sort, but they want the material, and they want the material crushed, but they don't want it all the way. They want it to look like a reverse vending machine, which means for 1/3 of the material going through my plant here, I have to do something different. I have to intercept my automation on the backside of that plant and manually siphon off containers by commodity type in different quantities for the pickup agent that requested that way, which is, frankly, just the kiss of death for any high-speed industrial process, whether it's recycling or something else. The worst thing to do to your efficiency is to take a process that is running fast and efficiently and to stop it, change it, start it, and stop it again. And that's what the law allows. And it allows it just because when the law came in, it didn't contemplate this kind of high-speed industrial use for recycling containers. This gets a little bit worse if we go to the next slide. So this picture, I'm sorry, this is a horrible picture. What I wanted to show you is this is a tractor trailer full of baled material. Imagine that these are bales of clean plastic. If you click forward one, I have a vanity shot of clean plastic. This is what clean plastic actually looks like, or clean containers. But I couldn't find a picture of those for this presentation. So this is a trailer of baled material. We can send one of these out of the back of Clynk with bales of PET every 2 days or so. And it goes out of the state and it's ready for a recycler. The alternative, which will come up on the right, is that we take that loose material and we put it into these things called super sacks. It takes 8 tractor trailers of these to equal 1 tractor trailer of baled PET. And then what happens is that tractor trailer gets loaded up. It gets driven up to Lisbon Falls, which is where the only place in Maine that processes besides Clynk in large scale. It then takes additional hours of processing time, and it gets reloaded, and then it gets trucked out of state. So if you go one more, that's a picture of 8 trucks. That's what it looks like to handle the same amount of material. And it is so inefficient. It is also just awful for the environment. It is painful to look at. But it is allowed by the law, and we need to change it. For the good of our environment and our efficiency, it just needs to be changed. One more example. So the current law doesn't really anticipate large scale businesses like Clynk. So in the rules, those pickup agents, who again, they represent the manufacturers, we have 2 of them in Maine. They're required to pick up at any redemption center every 15 days. And if that redemption center is busy, then the redemption center can call for an additional pickup after 10,000 containers accumulate. And then the agent has 10 days to come get those 10,000 containers. When they come to pick up those containers, there's another loophole in the law that allows them to say, I'll pick up what's feasible. So I may not pick it all up, but I'll pick up what's feasible. So let me tell you what happens with Clynk in this case. And before I do, I'll just mention, I talked to Peter about this to get my stats. For a busy redemption center, standalone redemption center, they can do 30,000 containers in a day. So they back up pretty fast too. But when you're taking the material from 55 redemption centers and processing it like Clynk does, it becomes really exacerbated. So let's advance. So I'll give you a mediocre day at Clynk. We handle 600,000 containers in a day. 20% of those belong to one of the pickup agents. So that's 120 containers a day due to that pickup agent. 2 hours after I get my monthly pickup, if they're following the letter of the law, I already have 12,000 containers. That's 2 hours later. And that means I can call and request another pickup. And I'll do that every 2 hours, all day and all night, because that's how I build those 12,000 containers. So I now have a growing storage issue. So if the agent takes 10 days to arrive, which they're allowed to do by law, I will have for them 11 dumpsters of crushed glass or 30 dumpsters of broken glass, which I need to find space for in my yard. It's about 8,000 square feet of space if I pack them in really tight. I'll have 100 super sacks of crushed aluminum or 4 trailers worth for them to pick up, which I've had to store. I'll have 82 super sacks of crushed plastic, which is 3 more trailers worth. And in order for that pickup agent to take all of that material from my facility, which is, by the way, choking my facility because it's only 20% of what I've handled in this time frame. I have other manufacturers I'm servicing in a different way. It will take 20 hours for the pickup agent to clear out my site. And that's longer than they work in a day. So what happens? They'll say, well, it's not feasible for me to pick everything up that you need me to pick up. And I have to say, okay. And then honestly, we don't even really know what happens next in the law because the law is not clear, but pretty much what I think is I get to call again and say I have 10,000 containers and we start this whole process again, but we start it with a backlog that's built up because I wasn't cleared out well the first time. It's just inefficient. And it's broken. You know, it's frankly just broken. It's not meeting the intent of the law and it's not helping the program to be efficient. And it's urgent that we do something about this because we are going to be hit in summer of 2023 with more containers, and we need a way to handle them as efficiently as we possibly can. So I get asked, you know, is this just a play to do something good for Clynk, you know, to line Clynk's pockets? And it's not. The law changes that we're looking at are really to help modernize the bill, and they can benefit redemption centers that are not Clynk. But in the short term, the benefit is to 25% of the market, which helps us to not be overwhelmed as Clynk or to collapse under the volume that we're handling. I'm envisioning it enabling a freer market for traditional redemption centers. Clynk believes that consumers should have options, that they should be able to redeem any way they want, hand count, RVM, or bag drop. And so we don't look to put anybody out of business, but we do look to help the traditional redemption centers be more efficient if they can be. So we're suggesting that they should be able to use bag drop, account-based bag processing as a technology, just like they are able to use reverse vending machines. And that if they want to invest in what it takes to be able to produce those bales of material themselves, they should be able to do that and get compensated for it. We see this as reducing the total cost in the system. It obviously, you know, enhances the benefits that the bottle bill already has on the environment. And it helps to retain that system that is going to be in place for EPR. We can forward. So this is just my vanity shot for Clynk, a little bit of what we do in Maine, and I'll leave it up here for you to read while I speak. I did see in the comments coming up, and I apologize if I've missed others, but there are a number of comments about the Clynk bags, both why do we have them? Why do we need to pay for them? Why would you put more plastic in the system? So let me just say a little bit about that. Because the material has to get transported from the drop location to these locations that are processing, they have to be in something. So Hannaford sells the Clynk bags. Clynk does not make money off of those bags. They're sold at cost. And they are typically the least expensive garbage bag that you can get. The bags are made of recycled plastic, and the material is recycled after use. We require them because we need things to be standard. So they stack nicely when they're all the same size. They stack nicely on our trucks. If you've seen the back of a Clynk truck, it looks like, you know, you've built a log cabin or a dam. If you and we need them to be a certain weight so that our drivers and our processors can handle them without injury. We need them to be a certain thickness so that they will open when the operator tries to open them and they don't struggle. So that's why we have these bags that we have standardized. I see a note, who recycles them? They're sold to recyclers, just like we sell plastic, just like we sell aluminum. They are sent out of state to a number of recyclers. They're made into things like railroad ties and other products that incorporate a lower grade plastic material. They're not made back into beverage containers. Only beverage containers go into beverage containers. So in a nutshell, you know, this slide talks about the impact that Clynk has had in our 17 years in Maine. I know a lot of you have been touched through the Clynk to Give program. We have over 3,000 organizations that participate, and we return funds daily for their fundraising efforts. 3.5 million has been returned through Clynk to Give to date. We're stepping in where municipal transfer stations and other community stations are in duress and helping out. We have programs with microbreweries to recycle their packaging, and we are all about this community and consumers in this state. And you know what we're looking for in terms of the law changes are a way to continue to be viable and to be recognized in the law so that we can operate on equal footing.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Alison. That was awesome. I always learn something new every time I hear from you. Thank you. And you teed it up nicely. So I'm going to just talk for a few minutes. We can leave a few minutes for questions about what we've been up to as far as policy solutions. Let's see if I can do this. So I'm going to continue my analogy of the health, our friend in need of a rescue here. So we're currently urging passage of two important bills. And I'm considering them kind of a first aid, emergency, stop the bleeding kind of bill, and then a bigger bill to modernize the beverage container law into the future. So let's see. Oh, I wanted to talk a lot. Well, I'll go with this one first, I guess. I thought I had the other one first. So this is the bigger bill. This is the modernization piece. And Representative Alison Vanderhoof of Woolwich is sponsoring this one. I have been in cahoots with her since early September. We came together. She had been receiving a lot of phone calls from a lot of her constituents who are really concerned about where they were going to take their containers and what was going to happen. There's a big redemption center desert around that area. And we found each other. We've been doing tours together, and she is really going above and beyond. She's she's a great lawmaker. She's talking to everybody. And our idea is really we knew this was going to be a year where the bottle bill was going to need some help. There was going to be a lot of policy proposals brought forward, and we're trying to use a crystal ball and talk to stakeholders and iron out a bill that we hope can get enough support of the players to actually pass and help the committee out. So she's been a wonder. We've talked to everybody. Well, not everybody. We're working our way through. And we discovered a lot of opportunity. This to me is one of the biggest places of opportunity. According to the numbers that DEP put out recently, 1.17 billion containers sold in Maine with a 75% redemption rate. And we guesstimate about 93% of those are 5 cents and the rest are 15. I come up with this number of 16.7 million in unclaimed deposits. Right now, the state's general fund gets 3.5 million of those from non-commingled containers. And then all the commingling groups who do commingle containers to reduce sorts at redemption centers, they get to keep their unclaimed deposits. We don't know exactly how much that is, but it's about an 80-20 split guesstimation. So for a program in need, kind of abandoned Nichols seemed like a really good place to look for money to infuse into the system. Way too many sorts. We've talked about this before in this presentation. Since 1976, there's so many more types of beverage containers, types of beverages, types of materials, and it's just turned into this unwieldy amount of, there could be 300, 400, 500, 600 sorts depending on what location, and it's really, it's crazy. So there's that issue. There are a lot of benefits of technology. We just heard a lot about the Clynk technology, and this is a picture of what happens inside a reverse vending machine that are a lot of redemption centers. This might even be at your redemption center, Peter, this photo. But this is what happens when you feed those in. They get scanned and counted and crushed, and it really does, it reduces the volume. People don't like to ship air, they say, and it also is a nice way to find out if that container is labeled and if it's part of the system. Also, there's not enough reuse and refill. This is a picture of the containers, the milk containers at Smiling Hill Farm. There's a lot of untapped opportunity for reuse and refill. Okay, so Senator Carney's stabilization bill. So switching gears back to the emergency bill. This is the slide that I thought was first. So this is really getting at what Peter was talking about. Increasing the handling fee from its current 4.5 cents to 5.75 cents. And the emergency legislation, which means that it would go into effect as soon as it's passed, and we need 2/3 of the lawmakers to vote for this. That bill also has it tied to inflation, so we don't have to come back with a new law every single time we need it to be increased. It provides a limited waiver authority to help basically places like Clynk reduce labor time required for processing at the department's discretion for a limited amount of time to deal with this summer onslaught that we're all anticipating. And a little bit more, sorry to jump around, back to Representative Hepler's bill, the modernization bill. I will say it's more comprehensive than this, and NRCM definitely supports adding in a definition for Clynk program and things that Alison mentioned here. But these are some of the biggies too. No more manual brand sorting at redemption centers. So it basically require everybody to commingle so that redemption centers are just sorting by material type and size. It earmarks the unclaimed deposits to support the bottle bill program. So this could potentially be for any potential handling fee increase, so that it would lessen the blow on the beverage manufacturers. The technology upgrades needed, establishment of new redemption centers where we might have a desert. And it requires investment in reusable and refillable containers. And I've talked to a lot of successful programs in Canada and out west and found out what types of activities would be needed. I'm seeing all the hearts show up, thank you, to get this going in Maine. And we've made a nice list of those things. And I think it could really help move the needle there. Okay. And there's other bills. I'm trying to go fast, but not too fast. So other bills have been introduced. These are the two that we've been talking about. And they've not yet been printed, so there's no LD numbers to direct you to, unfortunately. These two bills have been printed. The first, and they're up for a public hearing on Wednesday next week. So if you're interested, please get a hold of me or sign up to testify on these bills. The first is a handling fee increase, which is great, but it's only 0.5 cent. It wouldn't go into effect till January. So you can endorse the concept, but maybe a little more, a little sooner. And then there's a resolve bill put in by the Department of Environmental Protection to study and return to the committee next year with solutions that they see. But I'm feeling still optimistic that we can come up with a solution this year for that. I'm sorry, we're running up on time. And there's a few other bills that haven't been printed, but they'll probably get combined along the way. Okay. And if you want to help, please sign up for our Action Network or join us for State House Action Day. Kristen, maybe you could put those links in the chat for people. Obviously, contact your lawmakers when the time comes. And also, please redeem your bottles and cans. Do not have any more unclaimed deposits, and keep these materials out of your municipalities and into our redemption centers, who really could use the handling fee revenue from those containers. And that is it. And sorry we didn't leave more time for questions, but Kristen, maybe you can pick a few that you're seeing, and
yeah, for sure. Thank you to all of you. We were able to actually answer a couple questions via typing, and then I think a lot of questions were answered throughout those presentations. But a lot of people are asking, who should I be contacting? Can you give us a list? And as Sarah just said, if you sign up for NRCM's Action Network, we will send out action alerts for when it makes the most sense to contact your legislators, and a form letter for how to do that, everything. And then that link I just put in the chat for our State House Action Day is a chance to join us in Augusta, and we'll actually go over to the State House and have an opportunity to talk in person with your legislators. And the bottle bill is one of the priorities that we want to talk about. But let's see, some of the other questions we had in here. One, Tristan was asking, what happens to crinkled or unreadable bottle returns? Can a machine identify those? And is there any attrition level that happens with those? Peter, maybe that's a good question.
Peter or Alison.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yep. Those at a redemption center like ours, as long as they still maintain their label and identified as a depositable container, 5 cents or 15 for wine and liquor, we're able to redeem that.
We are too.
Yeah, too. Great. Good to hear. And then this is the question for Clynk. Can we add bottles that are not beverage if they're clean? It seems to be such a waste to trash glass bottles that could be used for other items.
So yes, technically you can add them, and we will make sure that they're recycled, but please be aware that glass has no value, and is the most expensive thing for anyone to handle. So go easy on us with your extra glass, and make sure that it is related to food, so that we don't degrade what we have in the bag.
Great. Then we had this one come in from Sarah. She asked, why are we not seeing a significant increase in the deposit amount? A nickel does not seem to deter people from just tossing bottles on the road where she lives.
I can take a quick stab at that. I go back and forth on this almost every day, depending on who I talk to and what's about it. It's a big deal to change the deposit amount is the big thing. So that it's from changing the label on that to the transition for when people want to get back what they paid, or maybe if it's a higher amount, they want to hoard the containers and get back things later. And I think that is an issue, but it's not the pressing issue right this second. I kind of like the idea of what Oregon does in their law. If the redemption rate drops below a certain amount, then it's a triggered increase. And I think I'd like to try to approach it like that. But I do agree, 5 cents isn't what it used to be in the 70s. I think it's something like 25 cents now. And that's something that I think should be considered, but it doesn't seem like the most pressing issue that we have at the moment.
Great. We'll try and fit in one more question. This came from Sky, and I think this was when you were talking, Allison. They asked, why would a pickup agent ever request or prefer the loose material?
It's all about the economics of both businesses. So the pickup agents get paid by the manufacturers to handle the material. And if they don't handle the material, they don't get paid. So that's why I'm saying we're a disruptor in the space, because we're disrupting what has traditionally happened, because it had to. In the redemption center world, traditional world, when you have those loose containers, somebody has to do something with them, and the pickup agent has a really valuable job in that realm. But allowing Clynk to do it and get paid takes that pay from somebody else doing it.
Gotcha, thanks. Well, we are at 1 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of folks' time, so we're going to wrap up here. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, especially Allison and Peter, for taking time out of your day and talking to folks. I know I learned a lot, and I think a lot of folks probably did as well. We'll send a follow-up email with the recording, and if we were not able to get to your questions, or questions come up later, feel free to respond to that, and we're happy to answer your questions that way as well. Any closing words from our speakers?
Thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Excuse me, Allison. Thank you to everybody for listening and paying attention and being concerned about our environment. And please reach out to your legislators, reach out to the committee, and reach out to the governor's office, and use your citizen power to improve our environment. And thanks for your time.
I'll just add, if there are any Clynk specific questions that you guys have, please call our customer service line. They can answer any question that you have, or visit our website And I think a lot of the questions that popped up are handled there.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm just happy that everybody took time out of their day to join us and learn about this important issue. So thanks again.
Great. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.